For those of you who thought I was permanently gone, rest assured I'm not. Yes, it's me. I've been gone due to, sheer laziness and, work, real life troubles and all that. But I have not forgotten about my YouTube channel. Don't worry. But when it comes to, real life and all the other obligations I have, some things have to take priority, and like I said, I am, on average nowadays a lot more tired when I get home, and my free time is generally kind of just me relaxing, but I have been thinking, and I have wanted to get something out for a while now, so I decided to put this out. By the title, you can obviously tell that it's my, I had those 3 videos from before, my personal experience with episodes 1, 2, and 3, just kind of explaining how I saw them and how I felt about them. Not really a review, not a summarization, just how me, as a fan, felt about the film and my personal impressions of certain aspects or character traits or whatnot that either I did like or I didn't like. And this one is going to be about A New Hope, and I'll get to that in just a second, but I just want to address one thing. And this is just another, excuse me, this is just a small rant, so if you want to skip the rant, I'll try and find a way to make the annotations work. I have never figured out how to make it work, but I'll tell you how to skip ahead in a second, maybe just post on the screen when to skip to. But I recently saw a title of a news article online, and it was something along the lines of, John Boyega, whatever the fuck his name is, fucking wackadoo from episode 7, as according to everyone I've talked to said he's a wackadoo, gives whoever the guy who's playing Lando, a young Lando, his stamp of approval. I just want to bring this up because I don't care what the content of the article is. I don't care who the people in question are. I don't care what the context in which the title of the web article is even pertaining to. John Boyega gives such and such stamp of approval in Lando Calrissian role. This is the thing that bothers me, and it should bother more people, but it doesn't, and this is just what makes me hate the Star Wars fandom. Again, I am a Star Wars fan, but I am not part of the fandom, because the fandom, as far as I'm concerned, is up its own ass lately. To be a fan of something does not mean you have to be inherently part of the fandom. I learned years ago the fandom is just this cancerous, just self-indulgent gaggle of people who just feed off their own bullshit. But I don't know where this article gets off even having a title like that. And again, I don't care what the context, I don't care what the actual meat of the article is. To have a title that is declarative that statement, John Boyega gives blah 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 stamp of approval. Who the fuck is he to give his stamp of approval to anyone or anything when it comes to Star Wars? You played a stormtrooper who had something of a personality in one Star Wars film, going on 2 now, eventually. And again, I know that this is going off topic for what the title of my video is, but I just need to state it here because I'm not going to make a full video of this. Or a full recording, I should say. Maybe the guy who played Lando, and yes, I forgot his name because, this is off the cuff, I'm not very coordinated. Maybe he should give his stamp of approval. And again, maybe within the context of the article he did, but they didn't say that. The article didn't say such and such gives stamp of approval for Lando Calrissian. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it live, people. I'm going to look up the character, or not the character, Jesus Christ, the actor. I just want to see. No, not the new guy. Okay. Ugh, my God. Billy D. Williams. Oh, of course it's his fucking name, Billy D. Williams. Yeah, again, within the context of the article's title, it didn't say Billy D. Williams gives stamp of approval to whatever his name was. I didn't even look at it. It said John Boyega. Again, who is he to give anyone within the Star Wars universe the stamp of approval? where does he get off? Or where does this article get off saying like that, like it's a good thing? Billy D. Williams gives stamp of approval. That would hold a lot more weight, even to a guy like me who doesn't want to watch the fucking films, whatever it may be. Oh, Billy D. Williams likes him? Cool, that's great. I hope he plays a good Lando for all the people who's going to go watch this film. You know, it's like... I don't even know how to put that into context of how ridiculous that sounds. It's like... Okay, let me think. It's like if you put in... Let's go back to my stupid Lord of the Rings analogy. It's like if you made a sequel that wasn't authorized by Tolkien because he's dead to Lord of the Rings, and you got all these characters, all this new shit going on, and blah blah blah, and then the actor within this new set of films gave their stamp of approval to an actor who is going to be playing a younger version of Aragorn or something like that. It's like, where do you get off? Who the fuck are you to give anyone anywhere a stamp of approval? What degree of arrogance do you have to where you think the fandom, the community, as much as I don't give a shit about them, give you enough credit or weight within the context of what character you're playing that you can give someone a stamp of approval? What, is it because he's black? That again, I've already made a video about this. That doesn't fucking matter to me, and it doesn't matter to a lot of people. So if that's not the context in which he is saying, oh no, I really approve of this black guy playing a black character, who the fuck cares? Lando is Lando. Of course he's black. I'm saying if that's the context of the article, then that's stupid on the basis of that's just a dumb thing to write about. But if that's not it, then John Boyega is essentially saying that his character was such an important, pivotal, central character within the one film we saw him that he's allowed, and he has the weight to declare that he approves of a guy playing a younger version of a character who we've seen in 2 films, and who is in all manner of books, comics, games, blah blah blah. Everyone loves Lando, and even if you don't really like invest in his character, he's a guy who's just kind of around, you know, you like him because, it's Lando, you know, you can't really hate him, and then when you find out why he did the thing he did in Empire Strikes Back, you're kind of like, okay, I kind of get it, and then you try to fix it. So, you know, again, I'm sorry, it kind of went into a bit of a rant there, but I want someone to explain to me, and don't even tell me what was in the article, because I'm sure you could. I don't care. I don't need to be told that no name I played a stormtrooper who wielded a lightsaber without having any ability to do so, somehow effectively. From one film, tell me that they approve of a guy playing a younger version of a character who's in 2 films and who has an established base, an established character. Even if Legends doesn't exist, he has an established fucking character. Who the fuck are you? The only thing that would make him more arrogant, or the article at least sound more arrogant, is if he said something along the lines of, I approve of the way that they portrayed Darth Vader in the new Rogue One film coming out. Just again, who the fuck are you to approve of anything or anyone? Who asked you? I'm sure the article asked, but who asked you within the community? I sure as fuck didn't, because I don't care. But if anyone can explain to me where that on any level makes any fucking sense in, once again, the news of the new Star Wars universe that just keeps getting fucking more monotonous and mundane and self-absorbed, can tell me how that makes any sense, because I read the title of the article and immediately wanted to punch someone with just how stupid. The title alone told me everything I needed to know about what the fuck was being said inside of it. Even if it's totally wrong. Even if I have a complete misinterpretation of what was inside the article itself, the title alone told me everything I needed to know. And that's just... I refuse. I refuse. Let's move on, shall we? So, anyone who's heard me before, off the cuff kind of statements in other videos, or well, that's kind of it, but my other people I would talk to online probably would have heard me say it before, but New Hope, originally just Star Wars, before it became Episode 4, is, to me, and this is going to sound like blasphemy to a lot of people. Some people get it, especially when, you consider Empire Strikes Back. But, man, to me, A New Hope is the most boring of all 6 of the Star Wars saga. That doesn't mean it's bad. Let me stipulate that. I don't think A New Hope is bad. I mean, if it's on in the background, then yeah. I mean, I still, I end up watching it because I get interested and whatnot into it. But if I have to look at episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, eventually I have to come to the conclusion within myself of which I find to be the most boring. And if I take into consideration how much I enjoy Empire Strikes Back, how much I enjoy Return of the Jedi, how much I just get, I get joy out of watching 1, 2, and 3, even though 2 is close to being the most boring. 2 picks up with just the mindless action, even if you don't like anything else that's going on inside the story itself, which plenty of people don't. The mindless action at least can take you away from the stupidity you're seeing, or the bad acting, or the bad direction. Again, I don't dislike episode 2. I think that a lot of the problems people have with episode 2 are a little overinflated, but still, if I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt, which everyone's entitled to their own opinion, I don't dislike 2. I don't dislike any of the films, any of the saga films. But between 2 and 4, which are the contenders for the most boring, it's 4 for me. And my experience begins with me not knowing a goddamn thing about Star Wars. And it was my birthday. I don't remember what birthday it was. I was still really young. And a friend of the family knew that I liked kind of science fiction-y stuff. And so he didn't know. He wasn't a big Star Wars guy. He wasn't a big fan of sci-fi. He was just kind of like, yeah, this kind of looks interesting. And he got an old VHS of Empire Strikes Back. And he gave that to me. And that was my first Star Wars film, was Empire Strikes Back. And I go home and I watch it, and I don't really get too into it because I'm too young to really appreciate it. And I have to watch it a couple times over the course of like a year or something, and then I finally start to really like it. And I get, as a kid, really engrossed with Darth Vader. Even as a kid, I really liked him and all of his scenes, especially since now that I'm older, I actually think that he is actually the primary character of the film of 4, 5, and 6, considering that 4 begins with Vader, and 6 kind of ends with him, but I mean, you could argue that, but I'm getting beyond myself. I'm getting ahead of myself, I should say. And so 5 was so good to me after I started to really understand and like the aspects of it, although the big shocking reveal of Darth Vader being Luke's father is kind of like, okay, because I hadn't seen 4 yet. And I hadn't seen 7, obviously. I mean 7, Jesus, 6. I hadn't seen 6, obviously, because I had just discovered 5. So then came the process of me wanting to see more of Star Wars. And I knew the brand title. I didn't know what was out there. I knew that this was 4, so in my mind I thought that 1, 2, and 3 already existed. I did not know... I mean, since it was 5, I thought 1 through 4 already existed. And that they were out there waiting for me. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just go and find them. And 1 was already out. So I'm like, okay, I'll watch 1. And yeah, I will admit that as a kid, the brighter colors, the more crazy CGI, the more kid-like oriented stuff did drag me in a lot more than 5 did, because 5 is a little more adult with some minor kiddie aspects. The kiddie stuff kind of comes back in 6 more than anything. And 1 did engross me more, but I still appreciated 5. I still really liked 5, but then I had 1 to kind of really engross me even more deeply into Star Wars. When I watched 1, I immediately was a Star Wars fan, because, yeah, I was, engaged in both Maul and Vader. And the thing for me was like, okay, I got really engrossed with the 2 guys just because they wore black and they had red lightsabers. But from there was the starting off point where I'm like, okay, what are these two people? Because I know they have titles of Sith. I don't know what that means. Let me go and discover it and blah, blah, blah. And so I started to get into more of the background stuff, like books and comics that were already coming out. Because again, 4, 5, and 6 already existed. I just hadn't seen 4 and 6. And I did not know until after watching 1 that 2 and 3 weren't even out yet. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of strange. I had never, a lot of people were confused. What do you mean 4, 5, and 6 came out first? And so my friend actually, my best friend at the time, had all 3 films in the collector's VHS edition. And so I asked to borrow and watch 4 and 6, and he lets me. And I watch, don't ask me why. I think I might have wanted to see 6 because I'd already seen 5. So I was kind of like, well, let me just finish the story and then I'll see how it begins. It's kind of a stupid argument I made for myself, because I did. I liked 6. I didn't know until recently. Again, I don't understand fucking the Star Wars fan base. That apparently a lot of people have problems with 6. And it's like, okay, apparently the fandom believes that episodes 4 and 5 are the only films that ever fucking mattered in the Star Wars universe. Because if you reference 6, they have so many nitpicky issues with it that some of them just discount it, which is like, how the fuck do you even think 7 exists? But anyways, the fucking community, I swear to God. I saw 6. I really liked it. I thought that, again, for a young person like me to kind of really grasp it, it took a while, but I got it, and I was like, okay, that's fun, that's interesting, that's nice where it ended. And then I finally saw 4, and it was a bit of a mixed bag. It was like a shock to the system, because I have to understand that things are toned down, because first of all, it was made a couple years before Empire, so it was a little bit on the cheap in that regards too. The technology was not as advanced. Even by a couple of years, Empire was more advanced and had more money behind it. It looked better. Empire, I mean. And Return obviously looked way better than all of them. And as a kid, I could see bad acting. People tend to think kids are just, cut off from that. And the way that I understood there was bad acting going on in a film was that I'd get, embarrassed for the person, because you empathize with a person you're watching. And as a kid, I would always, when something embarrassing came up, when I knew that it was being said, like a line was being read or a scene was being done very poorly, I would get embarrassed, because I'm just kind of like, why is this happening? Why is this happening the way it's happening right now? Because I know this doesn't need to be this way. And there were parts in 4 that I felt embarrassed in, because I felt like the acting was not as good as people were telling me it was supposed to. Because at that point, I already heard people and knew people who told me that 4, 5, and 6 were amazing. I had not yet heard the rumblings about the prequels, because I was too young to even get into the news and all that shit. But people already told me 4, 5, and 6 is where it's at. I got where 5 and 6 came from. There are parts of 4 that made me kind of go, this is the pinnacle of moviedom ever? You're staking all of just Americana on this film? Which is okay, I mean, it's good. It's not bad. I've seen far worse. And if I'm going to be honest, episode 1 is not probably... You know what? As much as people want to give episode 1 shit, people complain about stiff acting from Jake Lloyd, because he's a kid. Fuck off. Get over it already. Natalie Portman, because I don't think she was giving any sort of fucking direction. But honestly, I would be lying if I said I did not enjoy Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor and Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine, and Mace Windu is, as much as Samuel L. Jackson's not in the film and he's kind of a stiff fucking board, That's kind of the character he's supposed to be, is a stiff board. So, and then, Jar Jar, I'm not even going to get into the whole Jar Jar debate again. Get over it. His character, he's not literally evil incarnate. And anyone who thinks that Jar Jar literally is evil incarnate needs to get over their fucking past with these films. To the point where you are projecting your hatred of the prequels onto a singular character. I think you have more issues than I do, and I don't even want to see any of the new films or material because I'm that much of a fanboy. But again, I'm getting off topic. I'm just saying that there are parts of 4 that legitimately are not acted as well as people try to tell me they are. Carrie Fisher sometimes does some weird things or says lines a little weird that kind of takes me out of it. Harrison Ford is fine, because, Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford. In spite of my dislike for Han Solo as a character. And Luke... as much as I appreciate Luke as a character, especially when I read the books and I got into comics and all that stuff that came on afterwards... Excuse me for a minute. Coming to you raw, that was a yawn. As much as I appreciate Luke as a character beyond the films and within the films, Luke is kind of such a piece of vanilla wafer in terms of how vanilla he is, that honestly, when I was really young and I was watching episodes 4, 5, and 6, when it got to a scene that is heavily just Luke, especially like if it's just him on Dagobah, I'd be like, oh my god, can we please go back to, Leia and Han making out on the Millennium Falcon? And that made me literally just sick when I was a kid. Because there are points where it's just kind of like, why am I watching this? I don't understand. And I couldn't appreciate some of the things about Luke's character and how he was progressing. And I think 6 handled him better, but there were points in that film that I was a little bored by him anyways. But I like Luke's character. I just think that original trilogy fanboys like to portray him as like being this grand like statement for the hero's journey, which is like, I don't think he's the grand statement. I think he's the most like run-of-the-mill hero's journey character you can possibly have, but it's done effectively. And his whole whenever Luke and Vader are in the scene together, I'm totally invested. And it's how they play off one another as the father and son duo, or just the hero and villain aspect. But if you put Luke in a room, if you ask me who would I want to watch in a room alone for an hour, and the room could have whatever it has inside of it, and just watch them go about doing shit, I'd rather watch Darth Vader sit in a room for an hour, do whatever he's doing, because watching Luke in an hour, he'd probably just sit and meditate, or complain about Ben. Ben Kenobi, mind you, not that Ben. So when I watched 4, having seen 5, 6, and 1, and then I think I saw 2 very recently after as a Christmas present, because my mom and my family already knew that I was really getting into Star Wars, or it might have been a birthday present actually. Yeah, it was a birthday present, now that I think about it. Oh, jeez, that was so long ago. When these films were new. 1, 2, and 3, I mean. And 2 had just come out. I didn't see it in theaters. The only Star Wars film I've ever seen in theaters is 3. But my family knew enough about me that they were like, oh, he's getting into this, so 2 just came out, and they didn't know shit, and they were just kind of like, he likes Star Wars, let's get him Star Wars. And so I got 2, and I had seen 2, and again, I really enjoyed it, although even as a kid, I was bored by a lot of scenes that were there, and I found some of the acting stiff. But again, I was still more invested, you could say, because of the lighter color palette, or the more crazy kind of fighting going on, or the stunts going on, than I was in 4. And my problem with 4 is just that I don't care about Luke. And that's my problem. Again, this is not meant to be some grand review of the film itself. This is just my experience as a Star Wars fan. Luke in episode 4 bores the shit out of me. And I know a lot of people are, crying heresy, but this is my experience. It's not your experience. Your experience is totally your own. But this is mine. And when it came to Luke and fucking, Owen and Beru, Uncle Owen, the Lars family, I was just totally like, oh my god, why am I here? What is life right now? Because I was invested in Vader as a kid, and I think a lot of kids were. You could even be scared by Vader as a little kid, but you still want to know more. You want to see more of him because you're scared to the point of interest and an intrigue in what is he? Why is he like that? And the Death Star kind of interested me, but I was always the kind of kid who wasn't really interested in the Death Star too much. I kind of like Star Destroyers more just because they looked more interesting, but I kind of appreciate the Death Star. Again, I appreciate the Death Star, if I can speak right, more as I've gotten older and I understand, just the magnitude of what the machine is, the station is within the context of the universe itself. Unless you want to bring in all the crazy legend stuff of, hey, you want to know what a Star Forge is? No, don't do that. Oh, darn it. Sorry if you heard a weird noise there. So, the problem for me is that I was not that invested with Luke in 4, which didn't make sense to me as a kid because I already knew who he was from watching 5 and 6. And I was also one of those dumb little shits who didn't really understand where Anakin was going in 1 and 2. I did not understand that he was going to become Darth Vader until I did more research later and went, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Why didn't I get that? It took me a while, but by the time 3 came out, I already knew what was going to happen. But there's just something wrong with me, I could say, or just my interpretation of 4, where I was not particularly interested with Luke Skywalker in episode 4 when it came out and I saw it. Or not when it came out, but when I saw it. And Han Solo wasn't very interesting to me. I did not get interested in Obi-Wan's character. Leia was a little more interesting just because, she was trapped on the Death Star with Vader, but, I did not... I guess still was kind of like, whatever. And I don't really care. I want to see more Darth Vader. And as their stories kind of began to intertwine, then things became a lot more interesting to me. And then, of course, they get off the Death Star, they get to Yavin 4, and I did not know then that Yavin 4 becomes so pivotal to me as a Star Wars fan, just with how much Yavin 4 comes up later, with characters I do really love. And, the whole battle of the Death Star, that was worth it for me, seeing that whole battle play out, but... if I'm going to be honest, in terms of on-screen space battles that I have seen, because I don't give a shit about any of the shit coming out right now. In terms of space battles, of course I love the space battle beginning of episode 3. I don't care what anyone says or what anyone's gripes are, I enjoy it. I even enjoyed the space battle in episode 1 with the Naboo fighters going and fighting the vultures. Because that's at least visually interesting. And again, I think I might have been ruined because I had seen 5, 6, 1, and 2 at that point. Because I already really did love the ending sequence of 1. I really loved seeing the space battle coincide with the battle inside the city for the palace, and the big battle with the grassy plains between the droid army and the Gungans, even though the Gungans were kind of getting slaughtered after the droids just moved past the shield. Which I'm sure made a lot of weird people very happy to see people being massacred. And I had already seen the snow speeder scene in episode 5. I had already seen the battle over Endor in episode 6. So for me to go from all this and then go back to 4 to where it all began, I felt a little underwhelmed, because I'm kind of like, this is the jumping off point for a lot of people, and this is what got a lot of people invested. And it makes sense because it was on a smaller scale, because you're supposed to go from this to getting bigger threats and bigger situations and bigger threats and bigger situations. Or you go back and you see how we go from a smaller situation, which is relatively big in episode 1, to a bigger situation in 2. And 4 just kind of felt like an anticlimax, because it's supposed to, because you're supposed to go from that to another. Well, I mean, technically it was supposed to be self-contained, but let's not get into the technicals. You go from that to 5, and you understand the progression, and you see where it went, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Oh, it's gotten even bigger now, and the Star Destroyers have gotten even bigger, and all that. But for me, it was kind of going from biggest big to mediocre in terms of the scale of what was going on with the battles. I mean, I understand the Death Star is, the Death Star. It can blow up entire planets. But even then, it felt kind of small, considering I already saw 2. The Death Star 2, which, again, was also kind of awkward for me, considering that was my first real opening to the Death Star. Even though culturally I already knew what the Death Star was, but again, it was all hazy in my young kid brain there. In terms of characters, like I said, Darth Vader really interested me. Tarkin was kind of interesting, but I always kind of just I'm not interested in the old guy who's kind of an asshole. Until I got older, and then I kind of did like Tarkin a lot. Luke was just vanilla wafer. He was so vanilla. Obi-Wan was kind of interesting up to the point that he died, and then I didn't really get it, and then I did get it later because I'm stupid. I was a really dense kid, I swear. And some people, I would even argue, probably think I'm still dense. Leia was more interesting up until she got to Yavin 4. I'm not saying that she was more interesting because she was in a cell. I'm saying she was more interesting because she seemed more engaged with the characters in the plot up until she gets to Yavin 4, because then she's kind of just Commander Organa, whatever you want to call her. Where she took on her more obvious high royal standards of being in charge, whereas in the earlier parts of the film she was more the active royal, and then at the end of the film she's more of a passive royal, even though she's still involved in planning and getting the information on the Death Star to people, through R2, but you know what I mean. I did like R2 and 3PO to a point, because I think, like most Star Wars fans, you like 3PO and R2 as a droid couple up until a certain point. Then you kind of get like, okay, can we not deal with the fighting married couple for a little bit? And I was totally not invested in Han Solo. As much as, again, that is blasphemy to some people, it is what it is for me. And I did like Chewie as opposed to Han. I was more of a Chewie person, kind of like, oh man, I really like the Wookiee. Can we not do with all the human bullshit? Can we stay with the Wookiee? No, because people inexplicably like these characters. I mean, Han Solo and Leia being a thing, well, okay, if you say so. But I'm more interested in just Chewie's kind of like, oh my god, why is this like... Because even Chewie is kind of like a little bit like annoyed with how stupid this romance kind of just cropped up. Like, just get involved with each other already, or don't, because you're dragging this along and unnecessarily. And even Chewie kind of has that kind of stance. If you interpret, you could interpret it differently, but that's just how I interpreted things. And in terms of 4 explicitly, I mean, who else is there besides some of the minor characters you could really like find something to like about? Like, I don't know, Mahdi for the 1 or 2 scenes he's in, just because he gets choked out, or Raiken. But again, minor characters in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. You have to really pay attention to Luke, Han, Leia, Obi-Wan, Vader, Tarkin. Those are like the core group of people. Or, you could include R2 and 3PO as well. But when you're centered around people who, at least on a personal level, I already knew would do more interesting things in 5 and 6, and then I see them kind of being a little bit more toned down, mundane in 4, I was like, okay, I know you can be more interesting than this, Luke. I know you can be a little bit more of a smartass than this, Han. I know you can be more engaging, Leia. What is this? And again, I think I might have ruined myself by seeing 5 and 6 and then 1 and 2 before I'd seen 4. And I was just so not engaged that it probably ruined the overall experience for me. And to a degree, I mean, I still like the film. I just think that, for me personally, if someone had a gun to my head and they're like, hey, pick now, what film from the Star Wars saga of all the, the saga, the 6 films that define Star Wars, what of those films would you have to say is your least enjoyed? And I would say 4, because if you asked me to pick from 4, 5, and 6, what I'd have to watch for as the only, if I had to pick from 4, 5, and 6, one Star Wars film from those 3 that I could only ever watch henceforth and never see the other ones again, it would probably be Empire, but I would have to seriously think about Return, because Return has a lot of good points for me as a film, but I would probably pick Empire. And then if you did the same thing for the prequels, it'd probably be 3, but that's a whole, I already talked about those films. So at the end of the day, I understand the cultural significance of 4. I'm not an idiot. I understand how important it is as it is what began Star Wars. It is where everything began and where the whole fandom started. But there's also a part of me that has to be honest with myself and with you guys if you want to understand where I'm coming from with 4, 5, and 6 and 1, 2, and 3. I kind of felt like I give away a lot of my experiences with 5 and 6 now I think about it in hindsight, but if you have to come at it with where I was, where I had seen 5, 6, 1, and 2, and then 4, probably a little bit before 2 or maybe a little bit after, I was just very underwhelmed, kind of like, oh my god, I know Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie and Vader do a lot more interesting things than this, and just I was not as engaged, and as a little kid you kind of pick up on the less interesting, kind of grainy aspects of certain films, even though they try their damnedest in the old style sci-fi films like Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6, or Alien and Aliens, as opposed to Alien vs. Predator, where everything looks more sleek and, well just caught and like just more sleekly designed, where things were a bit more grainy and dirty back then, if you know what I'm saying. And the palette of 4 just didn't interest me. 5 interested me. 6 interested me. 1 and 2 engaged me just because of their palettes and their designs. But 4 just kind of felt like, okay. Again, because I'd already seen more engaging things, which is the point of sequels. 4 is good, but then when you see 5, you're supposed to be blown away, which apparently everyone says, 5 is the greatest Star Wars film that there is, and I wouldn't disagree with you. I would argue, but I wouldn't disagree. I would, make a point about some of the other films, but I wouldn't necessarily disagree with people saying 5 is the greatest, because 5 probably would be the greatest in terms of just acting, plot, the point of the film, and the story overall. And if you want to argue that 7 is the closest second, go fuck yourself. No, if that's your opinion, then that's your opinion, but yeah, I'm not going to go there with you. So, Yeah, I'm getting a little bit redundant at this point. We're going on 40 minutes, and I know 10 minutes of it is kind of taking up with my rant earlier, but that's still like 30 minutes of me talking about my whole experience with episode 4. So to put it in conclusion, to give a bit of a end summary, I get the importance and significance of 4, and I still like the film, but if you're going to ask me, like, what of the original trilogy would I least enjoy watching, like, if you just had to sit me down and just stare at my TV screen and say, watch the film and do nothing else, I would probably be the most bored after a while watching 4. Not only because I know how this story goes with 5 and 6 already, which is kind of dumb, but I am just not as engaged with the characters of Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, Vader, even, to a degree, Tarkin, as I am with them, these same characters, in later films. I am not as engaged with Luke, Han, Leia, as I was with Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Maul, Palpatine, even Amidala to a degree, or Anakin, because I was a young kid and I did not... even now, I don't hate... Jake Lloyd's fucking Anakin. I don't care what anyone says. I don't fucking hate him. I don't hate Hayden Christensen. I was more engaged with the story, at least around those characters, if not the characters themselves, how they were adapted and portrayed in the films of 1, 2, and then later on 3. With the characters you present with me in 4. 4, to me, is the weakest of the originals. And a lot of people would say blasphemy, because apparently, I did not know this, most people say the weakest of the original trilogy is 6, which I don't understand, because 6 has a lot more going on with it, and is a lot more engaging and a lot more impactful with the story and the characters and their progressing and their progressed state and where they are in terms of characters and their development and how they've reached the zenith of their arcs from 4 going on 5 into 6. So I'm sorry, that's where it stands. 4 to me is the most boring of the saga. And I say that while still contending I like the film. I still like watching everything going on in 4, even if I get bored after a while in some scenes. I still enjoy the characters of Luke, Han, Leia, blah blah blah, even though I find them to be more boring here than they are there. And there being 5 and 6. Just being bored. Being bored is the death sentence to some people of a film or of any form of art or media. But bored to me does not necessarily mean bad, especially when there's good and interesting things spliced into an overall boring piece of material to me, which 4 can be, but that's not being fair because, you know, you can get engaged in the fights and the battles and the overall story of 4, even if the characters themselves are a little too vanilla or just kind of flaky or like, oh my god, really? Are we talking about the Force as this mystical, like, unknown thing when it's more prevalent, obviously, in 5, 6, and obviously 1 and 2. So, yeah. 4 is probably more boring to me just because I'd already seen a lot more of the universe. I already knew a lot more of the universe from comics and books at that point. Like, by the time I saw 4, I already knew that there was a vast expanded universe out there, even if I hadn't seen or read or understood a lot of it at that point. Like, if you're one of those people who hisses at the very idea of reading something, like reading a book, be it paper or digital, if you had to ask me, God, what would you rather do? Waste 2 hours of your life trying to... I mean, waste is a loaded word. But if someone asked me, would you rather give away to the world, because you're never going to get it back, because you can't go back in time, would you feel more fulfilled having given the world another 2 hours of your life watching episode 4? Or reading a couple chapters of one of the Thrawn books. I would freely give it to one of the Thrawn books, because Thrawn books are more interesting, even though they're fucking irrelevant now to modern Star Wars, but I'm not going there. Yeah, I would rather read one of the Thrawn books. I'd rather read one of the comics for Exar Kun and the Star Wars stuff going on back then, at that point, which was still being developed with the Yuuzhan Vong stuff, the new NJO, and Legacy? Yeah, Legacy stuff at that point. And, you know, we were still kind of in the Dark Empire, Dark Forces time of Star Wars, of the Remnant and all the just crazy crap going on with the Galactic Civil War. So, yeah. That's just me. You know, if you disagree, tell me how you felt in the comment section about just, you know, like with the other films, tell me your experience and what you think of 4 and how it impacted you, or where did you first see 4? Was 4 your first film? For me, it wasn't. Maybe that was its downfall for me. Where were you when you saw 4? How did you see 4? Did you see it alone? Did you see it with other people? Or did you see it after 5 or before 5? Did you see 4 after you'd seen the prequels, or at least 1 or 2? 1 and 2, I mean. Because I find that kind of develops a Star Wars fan's kind of outlook on the universe itself, depending on what they saw first. 4, 5, and 6, or 5 and 6 and 4, or 6, 5, 4, and 1, 2, 3. It defines how they are as a fan. But anyway, I hope this makes up a little bit that I made another 46-minute long video, because I just can't help myself. Because I am a sucker for torment with these long-ass recordings of me going on and on and on. Hopefully it engaged some of you, or at least gave you something to listen to while you're doing something else in your life. And, yeah. That's it. That's it for 4. I will do a 5, which is kind of going to be a little redundant, since I talked a lot about 5 in this video, but there is more to say on it and my experience with it, even though I kind of gave away how I first came upon it. But, again, I will cross that bridge when I get there. But I'm probably going to... I'm not going to make any promises, but if I am going to make another video anytime soon and post it, it's probably not going to be my experience with 5 and 6. It's probably going to be either a Sith Lord related video, and I do have some ideas for videos I want to do. Some of them would be a little repetitive, because I have a desire to go back and look at some characters I've already looked at before, but that's because of stuff going on with my interpretation of my old videos. But that's a lot more technical going on right now. The point being, if I do make another video soon, it's not going to be of my experience with 5 and 6. It's probably going to be something to do with Sith Lords. Because I'm not known for doing those, right? But anyway, that was my experience with Episode 4, New Hope. Still a good film, still a defining film of the American culture in general, and Star Wars. If you need to just... If someone asks you, what is Star Wars... You can give them 4, and that explains it to them. Or, I mean, people will probably say you'd be better off giving them 5, but no, 5 already demands you know what's going on, because then you'd be like, wait, these characters act like I've already seen them before. If you want to just tell them, if someone asks you what is Star Wars, you have to hand them 4, because that's where it all begins. And fuck you if you say hand them 7, because no, they reference so much in 7, they demand you know so much of what already is in 7, and they demand that you already laugh at all the jokes and references and ideas in 7 just because you know of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 4 is a defining film just as it is, because it is 4. It is Star Wars. That is a good thing. Just for me, it's the least engaging. And I might have, I freely admit, I might have assassinated its place in my mind and my my memory, just because of what I had already seen at that point. But anyway, again, tell me what you think of 4. what you thought of 4, how 4 stands with you on the scale of most interesting Star Wars films. And hopefully I will have something else up soon. Don't hold me to it because of real life. But anyway, I don't really have an outro, and these outros really make me embarrassed. But I'll see you all later. Peace.